Even the top 10 teams were so good. The standard of their portfolios was better than all the master students that I've seen.
There was a lot of top teams that did absolutely zero manufacturing, which is a really big judging point, and there's a lot of points for it.
The judges will find out if you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to what you've written in your portfolio.
Teams are coming from countries where they are the top team in their country. They are way above all the other teams. And so they go to Worlds with an expectation that they're going to do really well. And of course, there's only one team who's going to win.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Off the Track. My name is Michael Walker. I was part of Infinitude and Precision Racing, and today joining me is David Palfreeman, who is the lead judge, I believe, at the World Finals this year. Yeah.
For Enterprise, yeah.
Yeah. David, do you want to tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm David Palfreeman. I was the lead Enterprise judge for at the Worlds. I've been judging since 2018. Worlds, my background is I've done lots of things. I've been worked as an engineer, worked as a lawyer, worked as a project manager, and I currently consult on marketing and IT.
Brilliant. And for those who've been listening to Off the Track for a while, you'll recognise David, and you'll also recognise our next guest as well, James Gurney. James was part of Horizon. James, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So I'm James. I was part of Horizon back in 2018, so we won the World Finals then. Studying at uni at the moment, doing engineering, mainly Formula SAE is my focus, so kind of a lot of people go on to that after F1 in schools. And yeah, this year I was a design and engineering judge at the World Finals, so judging people's portfolios and engineering interviews.
The first thing we probably want to talk about is, were there any, I don't know, common mistakes that you think teams made that made you go, oh, this was such a simple fix? David, we'll start with you.
Yeah, there was, a lot of teams we certainly noticed started their social media very late. So a lot of the top teams who did really well in social media had started, a year, 2 years beforehand. And we're getting lots of views, lots of things. It was really obvious that the teams had social media, we need to do something. And it was very last minute. So advice for teams is to start your social media early and have a good plan and think about how you're going to use your different social media channels.
Yeah. No, I think that's valuable advice. James, did you have anything from your side?
I think it's a hard one because it really kind of varied across it from a portfolio perspective. There were some teams that were kind of at the bottom level of the scores that, to some degree with this, you can always talk about, designing your portfolio and everything to the criteria, but if you don't do any of that stuff in the first place, it's hard to do it. So it's hard to tell, if it was kind of the level of the project wasn't there, or if, it just the criteria wasn't really understood in terms of how you should present your portfolio. But for some teams, it was just missing very large sections. There would be some teams that were near the top that would just not talk about their, their 3D modeling or something. And actually, now that you mention it, there was a lot of top teams that did absolutely zero manufacturing, which is a really big judging point. And there's a lot of points for it, for engineering. And there were some teams that basically didn't mention CAM CNC once at all in their portfolio, or basically just had a single paragraph that said we completely outsourced it to this company and didn't interact with them at all. There was one team that unfortunately was like that. And in our engineering interview, we were trying to probe them for questions about did you go to them and then did you have things that didn't work and you worked with them? And no, they just did it all for us. And it was we're trying to give you points here, but so I think probably obviously COVID hasn't helped for a lot of teams in that regard, and maybe schools' resources, but definitely manufacturing the cars was something that some teams just completely didn't do. So I guess they missed a lot of points there.
Yeah, and we've had that in Enterprise in the past, where when I was judging pit display, people just outsource their pit display to a third-party professional company, and it's not what F1 in the school's about. It's not the people with the biggest checkbook. Yeah. It's people who do the best work.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think the virtual pit displays do not lend themselves to that kind of outsourcing anywhere near as much as the physical ones used to.
Yeah.
So on that, obviously now we've got these hybrid event with people in person, people in a virtual setting. How did that kind of vary the quality of the teams? Did it have any impact for you guys?
Look, I think it made it easier from a judging perspective to have a wide variety of judges from different backgrounds. So we had judges from all over the world. We had judges from Australia, from South Africa, from Singapore, all over the place, which really gave us a bit more balance. I think we just had everyone from the UK. You're probably going to get more UK-centred judges. So that was good. One of the challenges was, I think it was actually harder for the teams that were there in person. Because we could tell, I think the teams who were coming on for interviews, they were given a room, and I'm not sure how it was working, but it seemed like they were just rushing into a room and given a sort of standard setup and having to do their call from there. They didn't have time to prepare, whereas teams who were back at home, they could set up their video calls how they wanted to with much more time to prepare. Saying that, I would strongly advise any team to be there in person just for being part of the event and getting to meet people and, definitely go in person if you can. I was hoping to go in person to judge, but work just didn't allow for it.
Yeah, no, I think it was a bit annoying because I think the teams were putting like commentary boxes on the pit straight, and there was like bikes and stuff driving out throughout the week, and they were all just like the inbuilt laptop mics. So every time the bikes went past, it would like clip the gain, and you would just like not hear any of the voices coming through, and that's like really hard, especially when some of these teams we're struggling to understand in the first place, and then having to ask them to repeat what they're saying was not like the most optimal. But at least from the engineering point of view, like the points, there's not like, it's not really a primary judging thing, so it really wouldn't have affected teams at all, because like we're only getting secondary information and backing things up from those interviews for engineering.
Yes, same with Enterprise. It was just a backup interview, just to clarify, and in virtually every situation after the interview, the points went up. So there was very little thing. The other thing about it being a hybrid event, it wasn't very easy for us to give feedback, because usually what happens at Worlds is we do the judging. At the end of judging, once the competition's over, there's an opportunity for the teams to sit down with the judges and provide feedback. We weren't able to do that this year, which for judges, we were really disappointed we couldn't do live feedback sessions. So if any teams do want to reach out to me, please do. Happy to have a chat. I'm sure a lot of the other judges would be happy to talk through questions as well. I know in some of the judging interviews, some of the judges did try to give some feedback, and we actually stopped doing that because one of the teams, we said, you've done these 10 things brilliantly, and it's just this one little thing you could perhaps tweak, and you could just see they just look completely deflated, like we just burst their bubble, It was not what we wanted to do. We're trying to give just they were really, really good, but there was just one tiny little thing that they pointed out, and I don't think it went down well at all during the judging process, because they're so stressed out. They don't want to hear anything negative while the competition's in progress.
Just really amped up, and just even a small negative,
A small negative, yeah. It's like, you did this really well. If you could just tweak this, it'd be absolutely... And it was just like, oh my gosh, that was... So, yeah.
I think... Sorry, David, continue.
Yeah, so the good thing about it being virtual as well, because I was sitting across all three teams and, all 54 teams, it meant I could skip around between the interviews quite easily. So it's quite easy for me to sit in and listen to a lot more of the interviews than I would have done normally.
Yeah, I suppose that's a big advantage, yeah.
Yeah.
There was one thing you mentioned earlier about attending in person, how you recommend it. Peter, James and I have all attended in-person Worlds, and I think just the atmosphere at the competition is so much more intense when you're actually there, and it's so much more of an experience when you're in person with other competitors. James, Peter, you agree?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I don't think unfortunately, I don't even know how it would compare being online. Obviously that's because I haven't had experience, but just such a buzz in person. So yeah, I wouldn't even consider doing it online if you have the option.
Yeah, obviously it's a lot cheaper financially, and I think some teams were able to compete at Worlds who wouldn't have been able to compete otherwise because they could compete virtually. So again, we don't want it just be for the teams with lots of money. It's good that teams who are struggling a bit financially can still attend. So I think that was a good part of it.
Yeah, It seems to be just a very unique experience. And so we wanted to look at the competition and compare it to last year. Did you guys see an improvement in the standard of the competition, or in your case, James, did you see a improvement from when you competed? We'll start with James and then we'll go to Steve.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yes, overall, it's hard for me to remember generally what it was like, but I guess I can compare to what we did as well. And there was definitely there was so many teams on a very, very high level, which was really good to see. There was a lot of things that impressed me from like doing university engineering and FSAE point of view. That's like, that's really awesome that they've done this, or even considered it for their their car, which is fantastic. So I'm not sure it was at that level before, but no, really good to see.
Yeah, look, every year it gets better. This year, especially, even the top 10 teams were so good. I was saying before, I work with master students at one of the universities here in Melbourne, and the standard of their portfolios was better than all the master students that I've seen. It was scary, but also I work with a lot of consulting firms, and the standard of the top sort of 5 portfolios was of a higher standard than a lot of the reports get from top consulting firms. So that gives you an idea of how good they are. They're just absolutely incredible. We had one of our judges was a specialist in environmental consulting, and she was just blown away by the standard, especially the sort of top couple of teams, and what they'd done for sustainability and how they'd analysed it and the reports they'd done and the thought that had gone into it was just incredible. So it's it's not just at F1 in schools level, it's kind of international level and consulting level that they're really, really good.
And I think to any of those teams that are listening in the top 15, congratulations. You should go do a master's with David. It seems like you're able to do it easy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing was that the standard is so high, and the problem is that a lot of these teams are coming from countries where they are the top team in their country. They are way above all the other teams, and so they go to Worlds with an expectation that they're going to do really, really well. And of course, there's only one team who's going to win, and so it's really hard for us to. We're trying to go through, and we're trying to make sure we're judging all these teams completely fairly, and across all the different streams, across the 54 teams, making sure for each criteria we're judging it fairly and making sure we're picking the right team with the right score for that, which is really hard. But you could tell some of the teams were really confident. They thought they were going to win. They were, you could tell it when we're talking to them. They were super confident. We're going to win this. We're going to be world champions. And it's like,
you got that. Maybe not. Yeah.
Well, we're only judging one part of it. Each, so we don't know how the other judges are going to go. But yeah, it's kind of you. I imagine it's really tough on them because they we can tell that they put their heart and soul into it. You can see the amount of work. You can see the amount of effort they put in. So as judges, we're really trying to make sure we're judging them fairly and consistently to make sure we're giving them the right result. Because sometimes, you read through it, like so we had 10 judges judging Enterprise to make sure that happened.
And I think that I've experienced this where you don't achieve what you wanted, and so I vicariously went back for a second go with Infinitude, and James just full on went back and gave it another shot, didn't you, James?
Yeah.
And was much more successful. And so no matter where you placed at Worlds, getting to Worlds is an achievement, and I think the team should be proud of themselves because they have done a really good job, and those skills are going to be valuable when you move beyond school. Yeah.
Absolutely. Even in business, once you finish uni, going into business, just that ability, like the project management skills as well, were just fantastic. We looked at some of the project management portfolios, and again, I work with professional project managers, and sometimes I wish I could just show them some of these portfolios and go, look, this is what project management actually looks like.
And I think even if you weren't the project manager or the team manager or on that management side, you've worked in a structure that has been project managed effectively. So you clearly have an aptitude for working with other people in that kind of structure. So that there in and of itself is a skill.
Yeah. I mean, the other great thing we had this year, we had a number of people from F1 judging. So we had people from Alpine, Williams, I think a few other F1 teams as well. And chatting to them, they were just blown away by the sound. They were genuinely like, wow, these kids are just incredible. And for someone from an F1 team to be saying that, you know, when they say to the kids, you should apply to us, they're not joking. So I think in the closing ceremony, the guy from Aston Martin said, you know, send us your CVs. He wasn't joking.
I think that's a brilliant endorsement of the level of competition they're seeing versus what they're probably getting from university graduates at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we talked a bit about how you've had lots of different judges around the world this year. How did you ensure there was consistency between those judging streams so that it was fair?
So what we did, we had three streams of judges looking across all the 54 portfolios, so they're each allocated a set of portfolios to look at. But what we did at the start, we picked out a couple of teams and went through a couple of scoring criteria for those teams. So we said, look, this is the judging criteria. How do we each score those? So it gave a sort of benchmark across different types of teams to see how people would judge them and what sort of scores we should give. Then what happened is each of the teams went away and scored their teams individually. And one of the judges actually produced I wish I could claim credit for it, produced a brilliant spreadsheet to put on Google Drive, which basically you put all the scores in for each of the judges, and it showed you the difference in scores across each of those and the rankings across each of the streams and across overall. And then we could see where the differences were across the judging. So then what we did, we went back and then, okay, we looked at each of the teams across each of the top, certainly we start off with the top three teams across each of the streams, and then we cross-checked those scores again. So we each remarked those ourselves and then compared them against each other's marks. And then we did another benchmarking and said, okay, well, look, one stream's marked all the teams a little bit higher, the other stream's marked a little bit lower. How do we want to sort of calibrate this? So that was what actually took the time, was going through that round of calibration to make sure that all the teams across all the different streams were marked fairly. And that, because I say, what we don't want to do is just, you know, these teams have sweated blood for this for a long time, is really give them a fair chance to make sure we're doing this fairly. What we'd have done at a World Finals in person is we get all the portfolios, we divide them into groups at the end, we put them all in order. So, you know, this is a top portfolio with a top score, top to bottom. And then all the judges go through and look against each criteria and check them. You know, is the one I've just looked at, is it better or worse than the one before it? And that's a really great way of checking to make sure that we've got the portfolios in the right order with the right scores. So online it was a lot harder, but having this system of just each judge putting in their scores, and then we can compare where the gaps are. And then we'd have some, you know, robust discussions about, well, this team's done this. And this, again, it was great having judges from different countries, different cultural backgrounds, because they were explaining why teams have done things in a certain way, why culturally it wasn't appropriate to do things that other teams had done from a different culture. So that was quite eye-opening for me. So that was really good having that. But yeah, that was probably the hardest part, was getting all the judging aligned across all the different streams. And at the end, you know, we sort of got all the judges together. Are we all happy with all the scores we've got and the order we've got them in? And the answer was yes across all 10 judges, so that was good. But it took a lot of time. I mean, the judges were not, because we were all over the world, it was, you know, there wasn't a good time for everyone to be together. So there's some very late nights and some very early mornings for a lot of the judges. But, you know, so we had people from Formula One there who were just now putting their time in and going through and just super impressive and giving some great feedback to the teams as well.
And I think everyone can agree that the judges did an amazing job and put in so much effort. James, did you have anything to add to what David said?
Yeah, so I guess it was pretty similar from the engineering side. It was, we started off, so we had 3 streams with 3 judges each. And yeah, we went through like a rough go of so we had 17 portfolios per group. So yeah, went through that, gave rough scores, then that went back to the lead judge, which I don't know if that was Nelson for engineering, if that was someone else. But yeah, then that was submitted. Then we had the top 3, which was told to us from each stream. Then we all gave scores for the top 3, so effectively the top 9 of engineering. and then those scores went to the lead judge, came back with like, you know, feedback of where your marking sits compared to other people, what it could be higher or lower, and then then we go through our final marks, and then once we caught up over Zoom for all of the actual judging, then like as a group we could kind of make sure our marks per stream were you know, good between each other.
Yeah. The other thing we did also with that was when we went through as a team, as a group, we marked off the ones that we had questions about, and there were some things in the portfolio I was like, what do they mean by this? You know, and for the interview. So when we went to the interviews, we all had sort of, even if that team wasn't judging them, they had some questions for those teams. And as I said earlier, in the interviews, virtually all of the scores went up. Like there was very rarely that we put a team down. It was really just to clarify, like, because there's only so much space in the portfolio, and a lot of teams have done so much work, and they can't explain all that. So the interview was an opportunity for them to talk to a little bit more about it and just expand on what they've been doing,
and also to show that they haven't just written it, that they actually understand what they've done.
Yeah.
Sorry, David.
So go on, Michael.
So, like you said, David, with the environmental consultant, I think you said that she looked at what the kids had written, the students had written, and said they can't have done this, and then she spoke to them and understood that that they have actually done that. Like,
yeah, and I think she was a bit disbelief that it was so good, and then we actually spoke to them. It's like, wow, these kids really understand what they're doing, and they could, you know, be professional environmental consultants.
Yeah, and so, you know, the judges will find out if you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to what you've written in your portfolio, when it comes to the interview. Be honest. That's what we've always said with the portfolios. Stick to the scorecard, and if you know what you're talking about, then you're gonna get the points. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So for the both of you, what did you think you enjoy most about the judging experience?
James?
Probably just getting like a perspective overall on every single team, and seeing how every team went. Having like just being able to view the work of all the teams was very good. Yeah, that was probably like the main thing, really, just being able to see the standard across the whole competition, get an idea of what everyone's been doing.
Absolutely. David?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. And what I loved was the fact that the teams from other countries are starting to come through as well, because usually, you know, it's the Brits, the Australians, the Germans. Some of the Greek teams were super strong. You know, they were really impressive, and some of the Indian teams are really starting to come through. It's also good to see some teams from China as well, which was great. You know, they were doing really well, so that was great. It's great to see it's an international competition. And also from a judging perspective, you know, it's great to meet the teams and to see them. It was noted in a couple of my, because I tried to sit on as many of the interviews as I could. Because they're across 3 streams, obviously there's always clashes, so I couldn't sit on all the interviews. And also they're sort of in the middle of the night for me, which didn't help. But I tried to sit on as many as I could. But a couple of students said, "Oh, David, yeah, I watched your podcast on Off the Track, so thank you." So that was quite good. But yeah, meeting the other judges and meeting the team is just a real highlight.
And I think Off the Track we had the same highlight. We didn't do any judging. We're completely independent of F1 and Schools HQ, but we interviewed some teams prior to the Worlds and just learning about what they'd done to make their F1 and Schools team unique. Sonic Boom did some research into some aerodynamics with the body of their car. Propulsar had a lot of interesting CAD work and branding ideas, and there was just a lot of interesting engineering that we came across, and I loved learning about that from the teams and thinking, oh wow, I'd never have come up with this if I was in the competition. I think, James, you said something similar earlier.
Yeah, it was related to CFD. So there's a thing you can do, the name escapes me right now, but when you have a mesh in CFD, you can do a lot of simulations where you effectively increase the resolution of your mesh, so you're having more like nodes simulated, and then you do that to a point where you say, okay, the change in my result is negligible, so effectively finding the most efficient point to test it out. And there was a few teams doing that, which was, you know, something that I hadn't heard about at all until, you know, maybe like Formula SA in university. So I thought that was really impressive.
I think some of those things that when they've explained it to you, you go, oh, I mean, of course they're doing that. Of course that's a thing you do. And it just seems, once you've gotten over that hill, it just seems so obvious. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know whether it was like that with that thing for you, but a lot of the things I'm like, well, of course they're going to do it like that. And so I think that's one of the things that from covering the competition we really like to see is just maybe not simple ideas, but ideas that just are so smart that they are like they seem obvious once you've had them explained. So is there a difference for the both of you between the judging style of alumni and like industry experts? David, I think you've probably got a good picture of this.
Yeah, look, I think it's really great. We've got a wide cross section of judges. You know, we don't just want judges from alumni. We don't just want judges from industry. We need a combination of the two, and also having judges from different cultural backgrounds as well is absolutely essential. Because and that was a good thing about this year with even though it was the judges were all virtual, it meant we could have judges from all over the world. And that they could bring us into line on, when teams have done, as I mentioned before, done things in a particular way, that was because of cultural reasons. So that was really, really helpful from our perspective.
And James, obviously you're an F1 in Schools alumni. Did you have anything to add? Did you have any, differing opinions with the industry experts you worked with?
So yeah, in my stream it was 2 alumni and 1, I guess, more, I would say probably just an experienced judge. But I think if anything I was probably like a little bit harsh, but like that was the feedback that I got. So like I guess just coming to appreciate what had been done was really good from the perspective of those other judges, and getting more of a context of everything helped me.
Yeah, I think that was my finding as well. The ex students tend to be a bit harsher than the other ones, which is why we have 10 judges to balance it all out and make sure it all works. I mean, I think also the teams really loved having some people from F1 there as well.
I think it makes for a good connection with the F1 competition, F1 Prime competition. For when you leave school and you go into university, the F1 teams will start to see, well, they did F1 in schools. Okay, that's the first big tick on the hiring process. David?
Yeah, I think that absolutely. I mean, I think the fact that you've got people from F1 in there also gives the whole event so much more credibility.
Yeah.
When you're talking about it, it's like we've actually got people from F1 who are judging it. People taking time out of their jobs from running a Formula 1 team to judge F1 in schools shows you how serious the competition's taken.
I think that's brilliant. And so we have a question for James. As an ex-competitor, what's it like being on the other side of the competition and seeing how the teams are progressing?
It's an interesting one, because I guess like a lot of the time I was sitting there like thinking that we could have done so much better at the same time, like with a lot of the things that these people had done. But like, I guess it just gives like a very good sense of appreciation of like obviously how much work has gone into it for all of the teams. It's very different because you get the whole perspective of judges, and like, judging is not an easy thing to do, and like it's not easy to benchmark all these teams against each other in all the different ways. And as David's kind of got onto, like, comparing the ways that teams have written stuff and what they're meaning by it and everything like that. So like, probably just a big appreciation of the effort that it takes for the judges to do it fairly and come out with a result in the end.
Absolutely. David?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, the thing for us, we've got to be able to look at teams in the eye. There's 53 teams, and there's 52 of them aren't going to win.
Yeah.
So we've got to be able to look them in the eye and go, the reason you didn't win is because of this. And that was one of the things that was a struggle for us. I was mentioning before, we couldn't do live feedback sessions like we usually do, which is a bit disappointing for us. So, but yeah, I mean, just trying to be completely fair and transparent with them was I think we definitely got there, but it was a lot harder doing it online.
Absolutely. And I think that's the end of all the questions we have for you. I'll stop peppering you. Thank you both for coming on. Did you have any, I don't know, final remarks to add that you wanted to let our audience know about?
Yeah, no, just really well done. Just absolutely love judging it. They all did really, really well. And as I was saying before, like some of the teams thought they were going in to win. They're obviously disappointed, but they've done so well to get to where they've got to. And it's going to set them up well for life and for future careers.
Absolutely. James?
No, that's, exactly the same. Yeah, just keep on doing great work.
Brilliant. All right, lovely. Thank you
Thanks
both
for having me on the show.
Thank you. And if you want to listen to more about F1 in schools, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. And if you wanted to hear more about maybe what you want to do after the competition, then we have a episode out recently, Where To Now, which is Ben, Matthew and myself discussing what you can do after F1 in schools. So again, thank you, James and David, for coming on, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much.